This is the Make Sierra Leone Famous podcast. If you're looking to explore Sierra Leone and understand its culture and its people, you've come to the right place. On every show, you'll meet Sierra Leonean creatives and entrepreneurs overcoming challenges and beating the odds. They are artists, filmmakers, musicians, chefs, writers, storytellers, and designers leading Sierra Leone's orange economy, both at home and from the diaspora. I'm your host, Vicky Rameau, journalist, entrepreneur, and community builder on a mission to expand Sierra Leone's presence on the web. Hashtag Make Sierra Leone Famous. The other voice you'll hear on Make Sierra Leone Famous is sound engineer and producer Frank Bob McEwen at VRNC Marketing Company in Freetown, where this show is mixed and mastered. Now, make the show begin.
So a part of me was just like, you know what? I want to also, as much as I want to, elevate myself, I want to do that whilst working with people who are creating the same thing that I'm creating, but doing it back home. And that's where part of Slackfest, we always have homegrown content. And then moving on to other events that we've now, because we've got more satellite events as well. We have an event called Keep Pumping Cinema, which is focused on Sierra Leonean films. And every film that we show is usually from an artist who's back home, and just we want to create this space for filmmakers and other creative where people in the diaspora, we're starting in the UK because that's where obviously we're centered, but where people in the diaspora can be introduced to their work. And I noticed as well, there's a lot of other filmmakers who are based in the UK, like Sierra Leonean filmmakers, but again, they're always centered on just what they're creating, which is not a bad thing.
Today, I'm talking to an amazing filmmaker and a community curator, arts curator, digital ambassador for the Mandem, just like a person who I found online. And initially, I thought he was very, very annoying because sometimes people are so Sierra Leonean with everything. It's like salon this, salon that, salon this, salon that. I'm like, una blow. Definitely annoyed me on Twitter for a very, very long time until I finally, everybody else, had to just give in and just say, fine, I will drink the Kool-Aid. You have beat me over the head enough for this. And I'm talking about Abu Ila. So Abu, welcome to the show. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's I'm really honored to be here. I've listened to some of the episodes and just amazing. And also, I'm all about amplifying Sierra Leone. So anything that makes Sierra Leone famous for the positive reasons, I'm there to support.
That's right. So I guess my first question to you is, how is digital supporting your campaign to use culture to create community for Sierra Leoneans in the diaspora?
That's straight into it, but that's good. I think if it wasn't for the digital landscape, our platform, the Young Sierra Leonean, would really not be what it is, because the digital landscape is what brought us together, and it's also what keeps us going. Because when you think about it, even during the midst of the pandemic, when most of us couldn't meet physically, we still kept going through Zoom or other means. And then we've even also done events through means like StreamYard, YouTube Live. So if it wasn't for digital platforms and just being able to connect with people digitally, we really wouldn't be where we're at. And that's how a lot of people were also able to find us. So just being part of the digital world make Sierra Leone a much bigger space for us, if that makes sense. So Sierra Leone is no longer in its physical location. Sierra Leone can be at the palm of your hands. I can wake up in the UK 6 a.m. in the morning, go on my phone, go on Twitter, because I'm connected to so many people in Sierra Leone via Twitter. I know what's happening in Sierra Leone. So yeah, the digital platforms, they've really been vital into keeping us going and making us what we are.
How do you do it though? Like, it's a lot of people struggle with using digital to do anything. Like it's not intuitive. What are some of the tools you're using on your digital platforms to amplify Sierra Leone and, curate this young Sierra Leonean community?
I think for me personally, one thing, so firstly, from the first time I came to Sierra Leone, I've made it a thing to make myself visibly Sierra Leonean, which is why like you wouldn't catch me anywhere without wearing this chain. Even when I'm back in the UK, like literally there's times I'm just walking past and then somebody would start speaking Creole to me. I'm like, why are they speaking Creole to me? But then I realize it's because I've got a flag on me there. And I also do the same thing in my digital spaces. So let's say, for example, on all my social media handles, I've got like the Sierra Leone flags, if I'm able to put that there. And also sometimes I do things in the language that link us all together. So like Creole, I might, type a couple of things in Creole. So I guess it's just about making sure that whatever I do, I make it as visible as possible to people that, I'm a Sierra Leonean. And I've gotten people reach out to me through that. They say that, we see what you do and we're really amazed by what you do. And I've also discovered people through that, just people who make themselves visibly Sierra Leonean. So, and there are many ways that you can make yourself visibly Sierra Leonean. So for example, even on Twitter, I've got a list that's called Fambul Salon, which is any person that I see with that basically is tweeting about Sierra Leone or whatever, I'll just add them to that list. Even if, let's say, we're not following each other or whatnot. Now I just know because I might do an event in the future that may be of interest to them. So we may not be interested in each other personally, but Sierra Leone link us all together. So we may all be interested in Sierra Leone as a whole. So if I'm doing something that is linked to Sierra Leone, I might then message them, this is what I'm doing. It might be of interest to you, which is not really my personal interest, but more on a greater interest for like the platform we have, Young Sierra Leone. I'm not sure if that answered the question properly, but
no, definitely. Community is about belonging. If people don't see you, they don't know that you're with them. If they don't see if they don't see themselves in the contents that you provide and you produce, then they're not going to know that you're their community, right? So it definitely makes sense. How did the organization get started? Did you first create like a digital platform and then like tested out the water? Or was it that the organization formed? Or was it like a bunch of friends living in the same neighborhood? How did Young Sierra Leonean come together?
It's actually mad. So we came together in the midst of tragedy, if that makes sense. So I came to Sierra Leone the first time in 2017. That was April 2017. And then, the mudslide that happened in August 2017. So we really came together after that. So when that mudslide happened, I think I went, and this was so mad. Since I was in the UK, I was not involved in Sierra Leonean spaces at all. It was only after my first time coming back to Sierra Leone, and then the mudslide happened. So I felt like this time it was personal to me. It was even more than anything else that happened because I was far removed that time, because it's like I had just been there and then this happened, let's say a couple of months after. So for the first time I went to the embassy in the UK was doing an event where they just got the community together, get people together and to see how we could help. And when I was there, I noticed some other young people there, and then we just started talking, and then we were like, you know what? Let us use like the skills that we've got to raise money. So I'm a poet, and some people there were like maybe musicians, and then people that were good at putting on events. So we did an event that we called then the Sierra Leone Mini Art and Culture Fest, which was like maybe 4 hours, like from 1 to 5. At that time, it was maybe 9 or 10 of us. We did that event together, and we were able to raise £500, which it might not be a lot to us, but that's something that could make a difference to people. And that event, it took like 2 weeks to put together. And it was in a small room as well. Like we had maybe a capacity of like 50, 60, but the room was so packed that some people had to stand outside in the corridor. So when that happened, we were like, wow, if we can fill up a room this size with 2 weeks of planning, and it wasn't even much. It was all spur of the moment. So imagine what we could actually do if we turn this into a thing. And that's basically how the Young Sierra Leonean came. So the mudslide, and then after that, we just stuck together and then went along with it. And interestingly as well, most people in the group, they had only come to Sierra Leone as well recently before the mudslide. So I guess that brought us all together. So when I came here, I wrote a series of poems because I do poetry, and I performed one of my poems at an event in the UK. And then someone in the audience afterwards spoke to me like, oh, I'm from Sierra Leone. And I literally just went back recently. And I was like, oh, okay, we're friends now. And that's basically how it's kind of started. So yeah. And then I guess once that event happened, it was now trying to make it into a thing. So I thought, you know what, if we're going to be serious at this, we have to have proper structures and all that. And luckily we had people in the group who had like, you know, background in like HR and those type of things, like, you know, putting and keeping things together. So in the group, I'm more on the creative side. And then there are other people who are more on the keeping the group dynamic and things like that going, which again is very good, like having a different range of people in a group, because if it was just us creative, we would have probably just forgot about it.
The Make Sierra Leone Famous podcast is made possible by Dot Blue. With its certified air freight service, Dot Blue is the easy and affordable way to ship to Salone from the US or from the US to Salone. No need to wait till someone is going home. Dot Blue will deliver your next package to Sierra Leone in 15 days or less. To ship with Dot Blue, contact us on WhatsApp on +1 240 460 2056 or +232 88 313 330. In Sierra Leone, you can find our office at 17A Wallace Johnson Street in Freetown. Fly and go with Dot Blue. We go deliver for you. DOTBLEU.com.
My brother, creative people have their wahala.
Listen, it's always good to have people who are more on
cannot be left by themselves. Should never leave the creatives alone by themselves. Otherwise,
trust me,
they will give you art and vibes. Yeah. That's it.
It's true. And so it's good. But yeah, so in short, we came together in response to the mudslide, and then we stuck together since then, and we're just growing and expanding into different elements. And now we've got different members in the group who are also having different arms of things that they're pursuing into. Like, for example, I'm doing Good Neighbor because I'm film related, and we have someone doing Leone Carnival. They want to start a carnival, and then we had someone who's trying to do like trips for young people in the diaspora, so especially the young women. When they came the first time, their parents literally had so much luck on them, like, oh my gosh, if you go there, they're gonna kidnap you and that. So they're trying to then create a safe space where young people can be amongst themselves and explore, knowing that, you know, they'll be safe here.
That's really magical. I mean, one of the things that has not been lost on me is this theme of how Sierra Leoneans, especially in the diaspora, that in the last 2 decades, every time we've come together, a lot of times it's been out of tragedy, right? Like something bad happens at home and we need to mobilize resources. And so we gather together and we form these relationships that we don't often get a lot of like, it's rare for people to say, oh, we were just chilling and it was just joy and then we came together. The catalyst of the last 2 decades, it's always a disaster, right? Like something happens and leaders are formed in the community who rise to the occasion and then like take their place. So I can definitely see how this is also like in your story. How has the, I mean, you just touched on that a little bit, but tell me about what's changed between the first Sierra Leone Arts and Culture Festival and Slackfest, and like the last one you did, at least pre-COVID. Like, tell me about the journey. How have things evolved over time? Maybe even the ways that they've like maybe not materialized like you wanted or imagined, or ways that they've exceeded your expectations.
I think it's so mad. So during the event, I'm usually proper involved in it. It's only maybe after the events when I look at maybe images and then see, okay, how we've grown. So the first things first is the growth. So the first event we did, like I mentioned, it was in a space that was maybe for 50, 60 people. And we had like maybe 70, 80 people there to the point that people could not all fit in. And then the second event we did, the venue was around 120 people. And again, that sold out 2 days before the event. So I was in charge of like marketing and just doing all the Instagram and all them stuff posts. So when he saw that, I was like, so what do I do with all these things I've prepared now? Because so I was I was almost a bit disappointed. I was like, I've got all these things that I was gonna be posting in the last couple of days. But so it was, and then the final event now, that was over 350 people in multiple rooms. And just also, we had like other businesses that were now part of it. So obviously, the more we grow, instead of just being arts and culture, so we're bringing Sierra Leonean businesses to also be part of the event. And then one of the best compliments we've had was from one of the businesses. They were like, of all the events that they've been to and been stationed at, the Sierra Leone Art and Culture Festival 2019, pre-COVID, was where they've had the most intake of, income for one single event.
Wow.
And that's literally up until now. So for me, that makes me feel so special. And then I was speaking to one of my friends who's also pretty much like a mentor to me. And he was like, when he came to the 2019 event, he was like, wow, do you know there's so many people here right now who are making money because of you guys, because all the businesses we got through, people were there to support Sierra Leone art and culture and also Sierra Leone businesses. So all of them, literally all the food sold out and the businesses got a lot out of it as well. And the artists as well, they got to, network with so many people. And there was just so many different compliments where people were like, we're seeing people in that event who they normally wouldn't associate with positive image when it came to Sierra Leone, but just seeing them at that event, it's like, wow, so you guys are actually bringing people together for something that is so positive. So yeah, the main change really is just the way its growth is grown from, let's say, 60, 70 people in a room to over 350 people in multiple rooms. And even the events we did after that, when we did it virtual, that was pretty much even bigger, because obviously the fact that people couldn't witness it without being in that space, that even made it into something else. So it's just, for me, it's just, yeah, every time I see images on how we progress, it just made me feel like, wow, so there is space for this, even though it's not something I knew was that there was space for, if that makes sense. So I guess
I totally agree.
Yeah, it's just seeing it grow so much, and then knowing that, because even now that we haven't done the event for maybe in person for like a year, people are always messaging us, oh, when's the next one? Because people have now seen it. And something interesting happened. The last event we did in person, I don't know why, but some people might have thought, because it was festival, it was like a week-long thing. So someone came to the venue. Someone came to the venue we did it at. They came like maybe on the Wednesday after we had the event, and and the maddest thing, they traveled from far, and that's the beautiful thing about Slackfest as well. So people literally, it's not just a London event. People from around the UK make a day out of it, so they will travel, come through, because they get to meet with other people that they wouldn't be meeting with after, especially people who are not in the Sierra Leone centric part of London, if that makes sense.
Right. What's up, Peckham?
Yeah, Peckham, Campbell, you know how we
Southeast.
do. I know.
Southeast in the building.
So
I love it though.
The radio broadcast of the Make Sierra Leone Famous podcast on Radio Democracy 98.1 is made possible with a generous grant from the Asma James Foundation. The Asma James Foundation empowers women and girls with mentorship, scholarship, and life skills training. To make Sierra Leone better for girls and girls in Sierra Leone better, visit the Asma James Foundation at asma, that's ASMAA, james.com. And now, let's go back to the show.
Because I grew up in the U.S. and I honestly, throughout the entire time I was in the U.S., I was never a part of any organization or any association. Everything that people organized around was either political parties, schools, so alumni associations, and ethnic or regional organizations. So like, the Connaught People's Association, the Fulani, People's Association, FSSG Old Girls, Grammar School Old Boys. And so
Albert Academy,
one of the
all that.
Albert Academy Old Boys, or, the APC North America wing, the SLPP North America wing. That's all that I saw, right? And none of those boxes, I can't check any of those boxes, right? One of the things about, growing up as almost, I'm kind of like a third culture kid. Like I wasn't born overseas, but I left Sierra Leone before I was a teenager. And so I didn't get to go to secondary school. So that's out. So I can't do any of the old girls or the alumni associations. I don't belong to any political parties, so I can't do any of the political organizations. And then regionally, like the only thing that I could have potentially joined actually was the Creole Descendants Union, which at the time was just kind of gaining more global audience. And then I left the US and moved back to Sierra Leone. But so one of the things that attracted me to Slackfest online was that it was arts and culture. And the thing about arts and culture is that there's a universality to it, right? Like I can see why people will come from outside of London who usually don't participate in Sierra Leonean things or Sierra Leonean events, because this is the thing about arts and culture is that it's about the nation. It's about national identity. So it's bigger than the other things, right? You don't really need to belong anywhere but Sierra Leone to be able to find value in arts and culture. And that's what I think it's so powerful about. And also it's intergenerational, right? Like arts isn't, arts and culture aren't necessarily like a young people thing or a cool people thing. You know what I mean? Like everybody.
It's so good you mentioned that, because I always have to shout out this guy, Alim Kamara, on our second event, the 2028 one. Like he came through because we had like maybe a room full of 150 people, and then he started from outside that, and then the whole thing.
Yes,
so good. And listen, honestly, my grandma, my mom, and my sisters were all involved in that, and then just witnessing that, I'm like, it's so good to see that different generations of people can relate to that. And like you say, definitely being intergenerational is also one of the main things. And every time we do the events, we've always made it family centric. So like we've had people coming there dressing their kids in green, white, and blue and everything. And I'm like, wow, we're doing that. So it's amazing in that faith, yeah.
I mean, if you've ever been to Nigerian cultural events or Ghanaian cultural events, if you're Sierra Leonean and you're not well versed in your culture, there is a longing that's created, and you think that like, oh, I wish we had this. But in actuality, we have those things, right? It's just that like, especially if you're growing up in the diaspora, you don't have the access, right? You might be you're really disconnected from your culture. And so you don't know that like, if you stand in any room of Sierra Leoneans and you say "in," everybody's going to scream out. Like it's just what it is. But you're not going to know that if you don't have access to that. So yeah, I think that what's so powerful about the work that you're doing is making culture accessible to that generation of Sierra Leoneans who, not for a lack of desire, but just because of geographical distance from the center of the Sierra Leonean community, say perhaps like the geographical center, which in London and in the UK is the Southeast, and also the geographically separated by being in the diaspora, so away from Sierra Leone, having not been to Sierra Leone in a long time, or those who've been primarily like, first generation Brits. So they just don't have access. So it's not like there's no desire, you just don't have access. And I think that that's what's so powerful. And speaking about access, the other thing that has really been impressive to me is the way that you've been trying to give Sierra Leonean creatives back home access to the community in the diaspora. So please talk a little bit about how you've been able to bring content and art being created in Sierra Leone right now to the community that Slackfest is bringing together and curating for.
That's a very interesting question. A lot of us in the diaspora, especially maybe when we come back the first time, we have this almost a savior complex, like, oh my gosh, I know so much, let me come and create things there and then bring it back and show people what it's like, living in Sierra Leone. But then because I come to Sierra Leone so often, I got to, get to know creatives. And then I realized that, they're the best to actually tell their own stories. I'm not sure if that's making sense. So, and what was this? There was a time I was speaking to someone. They were always complaining about, oh my gosh, internet. And I could not really fathom that until when I was in Sierra Leone for 3 months and I had to update my Mac, and it took me like a week. And I was like, oh, so that's what they mean about internet, like being fake. So, and that got me thinking, because I make film. And then I know that, okay, there are people in Sierra Leone making films. And then working with local people, as I realized there are people who are just as talented. Some are even more talented than me. And the only thing is they haven't got the wider reach that I potentially have, being in the UK, just being around spaces with more access. So a part of me was just like, what? I want to also, as much as I want to, elevate myself, I want to do that whilst working with people who are creating the same thing that I'm creating, but doing it back home. And that's where part of Slackfest, we always have homegrown content. And then moving on to other events that we've now, because we've got more satellite events as well. We have an event called Keep Pumping Cinema, which is focused on Sierra Leonean films. And every film that we show is usually from an artist who's back home, and just we want to create this space for filmmakers and other creative where people in the diaspora, we're starting in the UK because that's where obviously we're centered, but where people in the diaspora can be introduced to their work. And I noticed as well, there's a lot of other filmmakers who are based in the UK, like Sierra Leonean filmmakers, but again, they're always centered on just what they're creating, which is not a bad thing. But for me, I believe in that group economic, because I know that as a Sierra Leonean filmmaker, my film would be so much more of a success if there was already an ecosystem of people who are supporting Sierra Leonean films. And that's why for me, I'm literally working with people who are already doing what I am trying to do, and then to build that ecosystem in a way that all of us would then be able to succeed. And one thing I would love to see as well is to see other people in other places thinking of how they can, just create an ecosystem for people who are creating content. How can you help them? Are you a promoter in the US? Can you put on an event for, local content from back home that you can introduce to people that isn't just the mainstream, because most people in the US and even UK. So for example, we have people that might know people like Drizzly and, people like, Emerson, because they've already blown. But then there's other local artists, people like KG, and for example, people like Simplay, the record label, who have young artists making sound. Now, whenever we do an event, we personally create a playlist as well of just songs that people might not have heard before. And I promise you, every event, people are always messaging us, oh my gosh, can you send us this playlist? Can you send us where we can find this track? So that's the little thing that we're doing to make sure people are being introduced to content that isn't as accessible to them. And the funny thing is, it's not even that it's not as accessible to them. It's just that, again, we're human beings. Most of my music is just what Apple recommends. And that's what most people listen to. Is that if you listen to, let's say, Emerson, if Vizzy make an album, Apple is going to recommend that. But if someone on lower in the scale do that, it's like you have to go search for them. And most people don't have that time. Luckily, as a creative, I have that time because I want to know as many creatives. So what I search for and see, I then put it out there. So yeah, just creating this platform where we can bring on more of the lesser known people as well into the ecosystem. Yeah.
We will be right back after this short music break.
We were not born in midtown. Yeah, we get hope, say one day we go make them. We were not born with money. There's opportunity. Still we want me somebody. It not easy. We like what we're paying. One day we two go turn to four. But not design we can go. We have it for one day show. And the entire world will know, say, we not been bubble pay. We not bubble pay. We not bubble pay. We not bubble pay. We not bubble pay. Number one, we born up and body. The game where we play now, both giddy. We not been a pieces and bommy. Fufu papa them beats Benny. We not bubble pain. When I can lick me guinea. Barry they shine like robbery. Don't knock me one cup Gary. One word the boy know the airy. We not bubble pain. Off to school with me khaki. They fight from Kissy to Potty. University pass you go read. You know easy, eh? For leave let bubble pain. I remember the time for the kitty. Some of free run go Gambia and Guinea. The thing we I see not be Lily. Some see don't wait Maxwell Kobe. Yes, original bubble pain. We not 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 bubble pain. We were not born with money. Less opportunity. Still we want me somebody. It not easy. So but not design with Papo. We have been so one day show, and the entire world will know, say, we not been bubble pay. For now, we dey crawl, we dey fall. Like when them put the low up and sol. And so we gon' meet the wall. One day we go stand tall. Here it is. Oh, the man don't swim, man don't swim, man don't tire. Every day, till the woman get fire. But still, I man get for beer.
That was Emerson with Bubble Pain. And now let's head back to the Make Sierra Leone Famous podcast.
Yeah, no, so like what you're saying is so important for as a message to people who are based in the diaspora, that one of the things that we have by default being in the spaces that we're in, having gone to school where you've gone to, etc., is you have and relationships and resources, right? You have access to people, and that means having and institutions and having access to resources that people in Sierra Leone don't have, right? And in this digital time where being from Africa is no longer this like very, very far place that's inaccessible. Thanks to the internet, you can see Africa every day. Like you said, you can have Sierra Leone in your palm. I think that there's something to be said about trying to create, not just for yourself, but trying to create a table where you and people who are based at home can eat. Because in the short term, especially if you're thinking about like people who do go back and they're like, oh, I want to go do this in Sierra Leone. I want to go do that in Sierra Leone. They never really think about, okay, how can I then connect that with how can I do something in Sierra Leone with people in Sierra Leone who are already doing, right? Instead of how can I go to Sierra Leone and I want to go to Sierra Leone to do this, or I want to start this. How can I start something or go be a part of something that's already being made, something that's already being done? Because what you can then bring to the table is the access, right, to your own audiences, your own resources, and your own institutions and people. And what you can get from people who are back home is local content, it's authenticity, and it's also expertise. I feel like that's the one part also that when people are going to Sierra Leone from the diaspora to create or build or start something, there's this assumption, and I don't think you made that assumption, which is why you've been able to do that. The people who are there don't know what they're doing, right? So there's nothing you can learn from them, that like you're the one who's coming from this place of knowledge and like refinement and expertise, like this whole.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that, because like I mentioned, so initially when I first came, I was definitely thinking on that level, but then the more time I spend with people, the more I realize, you know what, these people know just as much as I do, sometimes even more, and they've got the advantage of me because obviously local knowledge as well. So definitely, and I think it's about learning and then unlearning things, but I feel like a lot of us that come back, maybe we don't give ourselves that space to unlearn what, you know, the assumptions that we come with, and I feel like we definitely need to do that more. You know, you are going to come thinking you have the best equipment, but I see people here with better kit that I only dream of having. I'm like, oh, so that's how it is, huh?
Yeah. Also, Sierra Leone, if you don't come and listen to Sierra Leone, you will be humbled. Sierra Leone will humble you. As it has humbled, I tell people all the time, like, if you pay attention, Sierra Leone has humbled companies and corporations, multinationals who have come in there with all the money, all the resources, and Sierra Leone still humbled them. Let alone you, a lone person, like an independent creator, creative, or entrepreneur going to Sierra Leone thinking that like you know everything. Sierra Leone will humble you. But if you go with this intention to both listen and unlearn, like you said, and to like create with people and create an ecosystem that, because when you create the ecosystem, it then not only supports you, it supports everybody else, and then you have more of everything. When I first started my TV show in Sierra Leone, I had nothing. Like there was nobody. Like there was just no support, right? And when there's no support, you're more likely to stop. You're more likely to leave the country if you have the opportunity, and you're more likely to like just grow you're just going to grow very, very slowly, because then you have to play all the roles, everything, right? Yeah. To this day, I always tell people that like, probably the reason why I got really good at marketing is because every time I was doing something, nobody would write about it. Nobody would talk about it in Sierra Leone. Like the entire time I was doing my TV show in Sierra Leone, the 4 years, nobody covered it in the news.
Wow.
There was not a single article on a newspaper. There was never a radio interview. Nobody covered my show. Nobody wrote a single anything about my show in the media for 4 years.
Wow.
That I was doing it. The only way I was able to get press is because I had to keep, every time I was doing something, I would talk about, it was like, I was both doing and like talking about the doing. Oh, okay. And thanks to the internet, this is how I became like a digital devotee, is that I was able to like put my show on YouTube. If my show, if I hadn't been able to put it on YouTube, I'd be nowhere. And the only people in Sierra Leone who ever took an interest in my work when I was doing it were foreign reporters who were in Sierra Leone, right? So I was part of like a feature story on Voice of America about diaspora returnees. I got a feature in Reuters, again, about returnees coming back home and the things they're trying to do. Every single like article was foreign, right? And I know that today, had there been an ecosystem to support creative talent, creative work, I would have grown at a faster pace, because when you get covered in the media, it means access, more people know about you. It means you get more respect. It means within that place, people feel like, oh, what you're doing is valid. It means then when you go to pitch your show to a sponsor, they're more likely to look at you and take you seriously because they just saw you on the news. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, none of that was existence, which is why the work that I do today, so much of it is about making sure that Sierra Leonean creatives and people who are just starting something get the publicity and like media coverage they need. It's why I have my blog. I had wanted to close my blog, sweetsalone.com, many times over. But I'm like, without this, there's like nothing on this generation of people online. Like most people, for even like, let's talk about football, like Kai Kamara. I remember meeting him over 10 years ago. Like, I was the first person to even individually write about like soccer players from Sierra Leone from a position of like, these people are stars, started covering their private lives, who's getting married, who's transferring to a new team. I would go to the national stadium myself, running around with my camera, hyping them, just like letting people know like, this is us. You know what I mean?
Vicky, this is why honestly, whenever like sometimes when I speak of you, I say like you are basically the pioneer in this, and it's like you walked, so basically people like us and people that are coming through now can then run, because I feel like because literally, because I feel like, and I tell this to like other people, so like the more we grow, the easier it gets for people that then join into the system, and I honestly feel like you were probably one of the first people. Even one of my best friend that I work with when I'm in Sierra Leone all the time, he was one of the first people that handled my camera for me. There was the time I was like, oh, I'm gonna go see Vicky Remo, and then he was like, oh, that lady from the TV, literally. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I feel like you worked so that some of us can now start running and then think. But even now, people still complain that it's not as widely publicized. Like for example, Nigeria, they've got so many things, Niger blogs, all these other things, but we don't have that as much.
We will be right back after this short message from our brand partner, the Dollhouse Boutique. The Make Sierra Leone Famous podcast is supported by the Dollhouse Boutique, an American household brand for one-of-a-kind fashion and bespoke creations. Find your next stylish look at shopdollhouseboutique.com. We have stores in Baltimore, Maryland, and Los Angeles, California, showing the best of local designers. Our first international fashion boutique opens in Sierra Leone in 2022. Until then, find us on Instagram at Dollhouse MT Vernon. That's Dollhouse MT Vernon. And now, make we go back to the show.
It's coming. Again, back to this idea of creating an ecosystem that can support our generation, because really it's about this young Sierra Leonean generation, right? The millennials and Gen Z who are coming through this digital generation in a country that's stuck between analog and digital. Either your country that you're in is stuck between analog and digital, or your community, even in the diaspora, is stuck between analog and digital, right? And I think that, yes, in the next 2 to 3 years, as more Sierra Leoneans get the digital skills they need to move from just like putting content on Facebook to going out into the World Wide Web, we're going to see more of an explosion of media coverage for Sierra Leoneans and Sierra Leonean content. Okay, tell me a little bit about, because when it comes to Sierra Leonean film, to be really honest with you, I know a lot of things. It's one thing that I know nothing about, like nothing. Okay. All I know is like Jimmy B. And that's it. What's going on in the Sierra Leone film industry? Who are some people that we should be looking for? And what are some of like your favorite films? And then tell me a little bit about how you've been able to use like Slackfest to bring, you know, the film industry or films from Sierra Leone to new audiences.
So first things first, when it comes to film, shout out to the NFA, the National Film Awards. They just started in 2021, and they're the first people that's literally just bringing in all the people that are making films in Sierra Leone and celebrating them and awarding them. So that's something that's worth it. When it
comes, the Sierra Leone National Film Awards.
National Film Awards. I think
who are the people who started it? Like, who are the key players or key leaders of the National Film
We've
Awards?
got, so I have what the contact I know, his name is Barry, but I don't know his second name, which is not helpful for Sierra Leone. But I can talk about some of the people that won awards.
Sure.
Like we had, I believe we had Phoebe Swill, Alimatu from Lima's Diary. She was also a big winner. And so when it comes to directing films in Sierra Leone, let's just go into the actual technical side. The name that everyone should know is basically Sparta. I've seen his name, and I've seen his name on all the films that I've actually loved. So when it comes to cinematography, he's amazing. Okay,
and he's the video person.
He's a director and cinematographer. Okay. And then we also have people like Wizik. He's also done a few shots. I'm not sure if he's done any feature film yet, but he's done a short film, which is literally the best Sierra Leone film that I've seen. I'll actually put that out there.
Which film is this?
It's called Run. It's on YouTube. Okay. It's called Run. If you search Run, Sierra Leone film, you would love that film, Vicky.
Oh my God. I'm definitely going to watch it.
In fact, I'm going to send links to that film.
We're going to put it, sure. So at the end of every show, we have show notes. Yeah. So we will link the film the Run film in the show notes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is literally, it's an amazing film. And it's something that literally made me fall in love with Sierra Leone films, like Sierra Leone filmmakers in general. Wow. There's a lot of amazing films. Every time I come to Sierra Leone, there's always premieres happening. But again, like we've mentioned, the main issue is we're not putting these films in a digital world. And there's so many films I've seen in Sierra Leone and I cannot access them anywhere else besides DVD. Now, being honest, I don't even have a DVD player back home because everything I do is basically streaming. But now people are starting to learn and we're starting to get films, in the digital space. Like last year, there was a film I saw on Instagram being advertised, which is called Taxi. It was a Sierra Leone film. And just the fact that it was a film that had a dedicated Instagram page, that made me already fell in love with it because I'm like, okay, these are people that know that there's a world outside of doing a premiere just in Sierra Leone. And it was through me seeing that, and I reached out to the producer. I was able to get a copy of the film, and I watched it with some of the people in Youngstown. And they're like, you know what? This film is decent quality as well. The sound was amazing. We can actually show this. And that was how we started the first in-person Keep Comping cinema. So by having a UK premiere for that film, and that was the first of its kind, when it's an external people coming to make a premiere of your film, which again is what that is when we're talking about ecosystem. That's what we're trying to do, because now since Taxi, so when that film premiered, a lot of filmmakers, because obviously the filmmaker was very excited, sharing it on all the Sierra Leone blogs. So a lot of other filmmakers now started reaching out to him as well. Like, how can we then also access this? And so that's what we're now working on, trying to just get film. And then when it comes to people that are making amazing films, so I've already mentioned like director Sparta, and there's also Wizik, who's an amazing director. And then when it comes to producers, we've got people like Jamil Sisse, who was the producer of Taxi. And then we've got Lima's Diary. So they've produced a couple of films as well. So they're very consistent in what they're doing and very passionate. And then we've got Wow Studio, which is I think owned by Phoebe Swill. And they've just produced what I think, I haven't seen it fully yet, but from the preview I've seen, is the best production for a Sierra Leone film that I had ever seen. And I've seen a lot of Sierra Leone films, and
including all the stuff Jimmy B has done.
Do you know what? I was even gonna mention that. Like, Jimmy B has done amazing films. Like, I've seen a lot of his films, like literally. But when it comes to just where we're at the moment, I feel like the film is called Wathibira. I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to disclose this, but it might be one of the first Sierra Leonean films to be on like international streaming services.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I hope that does happen. It's very important.
And for me, that actually almost made me cry, because what that then means for other Sierra Leonean filmmakers is that this door has been opened. So now these platforms will not be as far removed from us, if we are producing similar content. And then there's also other films. So even when it comes to Sierra Leone films, I love when people do films with local languages as well. Just like there's sometimes I might watch a village film and they're speaking the Queen's English, and I'm like, this doesn't add up. I'm sure Baibure did not fight that hot tax for this. So 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 for me, I love it when I see, especially there's a couple of films I've seen that are set up in the provinces and they're using the local dialect of those provinces,
that particular region, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And for me, I feel like that is just amazing. So when it comes to, if you want to know more about all the award-winning films in Sierra Leone, there is, the NFA. So on social media, the NFA Sierra Leone, so National Film Awards. Yeah, and then you've got obviously the key filmmakers in the country. So like people like Sparta, people like Wizik, people like Fabian Swill, Lima's Diary, and then we've got Jamil, who's also a producer. And yeah, so those are just a few names. But I think
that's awesome.
Yeah, the one thing that I just want them all to do more of really is to just get us into the digital platform, because it's fun having, an event for people here. But then there's like, Sierra Leone is not a place. For me, this is one of my favorite saying. Sierra Leone is not a place. Sierra Leone is a people, and Sierra Leonean people are everywhere. So if they're not able to access what you are making from where they're at, then it's a disservice to you as a content creator.
Like what you hear? Don't forget to leave us a review. Your reviews make it easier for others to find this podcast. Don't forget to share it with your friends and family.
Absolutely. That's like such a brilliant way to sum up the conversation, though. That Sierra Leone is not a place, or it's not just a place, right? It's not just this physical space. It's actually its people, and those people can be anywhere and everywhere, and they are. Okay, so what is the next thing for you? Like, what's coming up with, I know you spoke really briefly about Good Neighbor, and I know you're in Sierra Leone right now to work on that. So tell me what we can expect from the Good Neighbor initiative, and when we can start seeing films from that.
Good Neighbor. So the Good Neighbor initiative is basically, so the main aim or the tagline in it is like, no matter where you are as a Sierra Leonean, can be a good neighbor to your fellow Sierra Leonean, not just even creative, just your fellow Sierra Leonean doing anything. So Good Neighbor, we're focused on films, but it might get to a point where we're doing film premieres and then we might need Sierra Leonean businesses to come through and all that. So the Good Neighbor initiative is basically just bringing Sierra Leonean filmmakers working together in creating a shared universe for Sierra Leonean films. And the idea is that different production houses would be creating different films that are all linked together. And I've probably been thinking about this maybe since 2017, 2018 with a project I called Alaki JC. And not based on me, because I'm a man, I'm not sober. So you're not blessing. You're not JC Baraka. Exactly. So, but it started off with that, and now there's just a bunch of other things linked around it. And then phase one, I'm hoping to start the next time I'm in Sierra Leone. So now when I go to the UK, I don't have a timeline for when I'm coming back, but I know when I come back, I'm not just coming to go to the parties and stuff. So I'm coming to work. And that's why now that I'm here, I'm actually working with people who are also doing other projects. Now, one thing I'm doing when I'm working with them is to just see how they get along working with each other and all that, and to see that, okay, is this the type of team that, I can then get behind, if that makes sense. Project from Good Neighbor should start coming out maybe 2023. So post-election 2023.
Cool. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been such a fantastic conversation. I'm a fan, so
listen,
I am even.
Thank you.
I'm even going to be fan I be fangirling on Twitter.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, thank you so much.
No, you can't go yet.
Yeah.
You can't go yet. So now we are going to do On the Six. So On the Six is a segment of the show where I fire off 6 questions to you, and you have less than 6 seconds to start talking. So I want you to just like kind of say just what comes to the top of your mind. Okay. So this is On the Six. First question: what is your favorite Sierra Leonean parable or expression?
Na and there was and before I'm clean or something like that. That's the first one that comes to mind. So.
All right, cool. Next one. Okay, what was the plot of the last movie you watched in 2 sentences?
So a girl in the slum, a photographer fell in love with her because she was kind-hearted. That's not the best way to explain it, but
that's all the time you got. Okay.
That's the last Sierra Leone film I watched. So,
what was the name of the film?
Something Point, Profit Point.
Okay, all right. Yeah. And what is the song you're playing on repeats right now?
How can I just go blank? Can I go to my... No. Okay. So, yesterday, I had Emerson, Bubble Pain when I was coming back home from the beach. After, but also, that I suppose. But also, DJ Rampage is a goal, obviously, when we won.
Okay, of course.
And then also Cool J and
English. Fam. Nah, you don't exchange.
Okay, all right,
next question. What's one thing you've been meaning to do that you still haven't done?
Buy a land in Sierra Leone, to be honest, and build a studio.
I see. Okay. Well, I got land, so, when you're ready, let me know. Okay. Next question. When you want to quit, what keeps you from not quitting? What keeps you from not quitting when you feel like quitting?
Not disappointing Sierra Leoneans, especially who, look up to me. There's so many times, putting on events and doing Slackfest, it gets tough. And then sometimes just can I even continue this? But I'm there's so many people who found a safe space in what we're doing. So I guess not disappointing the people who found a safe space in what we're doing.
Fantastic. And last and final question, who is one Sierra Leonean that inspires you?
Can I say you?
No, you can. Sure. I'll take it.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like you inspire me a lot, and you've also helped in shaping my journey. Literally, the first time I met you, there were advices you gave me that literally stuck with me, thing like me being more valuable in the diaspora than moving back here. That was something that when I speak about coming back home, a lot of people would tell me, okay, that's not a good thing to do, but no one actually ever gave me a proper reason as to why I am better off with 1 foot out and 1 foot in, as opposed to just coming. So thank you for that, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you. Of course, it's taken me a whole decade to get to that narrative that I was able to It wasn't that's what the voice of experience. It took time.
This is why I say literally you walked so people like us could run, and just do things, because we're learning from some of your experiences.
And then last thing is, you said that you wrote poems, and it would be really bad for me to come on here and not ask you to kind of give us a little something that you've written before, maybe something you wrote when the first time after you went to Sierra Leone that you might still have.
Actually, that's the
if
one.
you could just share that with us, and then that's how we'll close out the show. Yay! So, ladies and gentlemen, next time you hear sound, it will be the sound of Abu Yila reading one of his original works of poetry here on the Make Sierra Leone Famous podcast.
I don't remember much about the first time. July 31st, 2001, Freetown, Sierra Leone. 12 years old, wearing an oversized suit. I don't recall any tears, an impressionable age, so I had little fear of what the future holds. Excited about Europe, a land made of gold, but everything was different the second time around. 16 years later, 2 extra luggage, 46 kilos heavier. The night before, the clouds had been in tears, emotions that were mirrored by my lady friend. See, I didn't feel it running down my cheeks, but for a while, I felt my heart cry. From no chance to romance, old hands while we slow dance. Mom's voice in my head, they only love you for your finance. But I can't alter the circumstance. The story is bittersweet, leaving all that you love for the one you need. Everything was different the second time around. See, now I know that the streets of Europe aren't really made of gold, and I'm not jetting off to a better land. Hard work awaits me, with perseverance by my side to build a better future for the people who raised me and the country that birthed me. 12 years an African child, but the battle to become a Burgundy boy almost erased me. I am now an old friend to a lot of strangers, rebuilding memories of this broken city, a city I was once one with. Nowadays, even its sun scares me, fragments piercing through my skin without mercy, rendering me a refugee in shops with ACs. Walking through departure lounge at that same airport, in my possessions, 2 currencies and 2 passports. Yes, everything was different the second time around. En route back to Europe via Monrovia, the flight morphed into a vacuum of worry and fear. Atheist palms grabbing hold of armrests, religious palms clench each other with prayers and cries, mainly in the name of Christ. And I see a vision. My motherland is trapped in its ascent, underneath a glass ceiling of ill-advised decisions. Richest continent in the world. We shouldn't need bailouts. We need to cut the complaints about lack of resources whilst exploring ways that we can be sources. No one will nurture Africa on behalf of Africans. Yes, everything was different the second time around. Thank you.
Yay! Oh my God, I love it. That's so good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Make Sierra Leone Famous podcast. Until next time, ta-ta!